Alright, so now that we have understood about the basics of GraphQL, now we will start working on our project. Okay, so let me first of all do a little bit cleanup. So I'll remove the code which I do not need. I'll remove this, and from this schema I'll get rid of this type to do, and I'll get rid of this to do property from here. I'll also remove this create user mutation, and rest of the things we can keep it that we will need. And I can make this also, remove this whatever we have inside this query. Also I'll get rid of this user resolver, and I can get rid of this create user also. Okay, and I'll get rid of this context also from here. Okay, and apart from that, let's put this schema and resolver in a separate file that we can do. Let me create here a type def.js type defs.js file, and what I'll do is I'll copy this whole code, control X, I'll cut it and I'll put it here. Okay, and we have to import GQL here, import something from Apollo server, and that is GQL, like so. And we can export this file now. Export default type def, so that we can import it in our server.js. Okay, that's done, and let's create a one more file for resolvers, resolvers.js, and I'll cut it, control X, and I'll put it here. Okay, and then similarly I'll export it as a default resolvers. Okay, and now we can import these two files. I'll import type defs from // means the current directory, and that is type defs. So we have to add .js also, because we are using ES6 imports. For that I have added type modules, so .js is required here. Okay, so I'll import in .js is required. Yeah, so I'll import resolvers from // resolvers.js. Okay, we have to add .js here, we have to follow it. Okay, let's save this. Now what we need, so now we need a database to store the data. Okay, so if you have worked with Node.js, let's say there are a lot of choices. Okay, we can pick database, we have a lot of choices. So for example, let's say if you have used Node.js, we have NoSQL database, for example MongoDB. So let's say if we want to work with MongoDB, we have a tool called as Mongoose, which helps us in communicating with the database. Similarly, if you are using relational databases, then you can use TypeORM, or there are other tools as well. But there is one more tool which you can use to connect with NoSQL databases as well as relational databases as well. Okay, and that tool is gaining a lot of popularity these days, and that is Prisma. Okay, so Prisma is a tool that we will use in this course. This Prisma will help us in communicating with the database. So you can see it can work with Postgres, MySQL, SQL Server, and in fact with MongoDB as well. Okay, yes, so we will learn how to use this Prisma. Okay, so I'll click on try locally. So this Prisma is tool which we are using. This Prisma will help us in communicating with the database. So for example, we want to store some data into it, or we want to get some data from database. So that all things Prisma will handle for us. Okay, so now here in the quick start, here what we will do is, here we will click on start from scratch, and I'll click on relational database. So we will use a relational database for, let's say, MySQL. Okay, because MySQL is little easy to install on your system, right? And here what you can do is, we can choose JavaScript. We are choosing JavaScript for our Prisma, and for database we are using MySQL. Okay, and let's read the documentation how to install. So we need to install this Prisma as a dev dependency, or we can use npx also. So we can type npx Prisma in it to initialize the Prisma. Okay, it will generate a schema file and .env file for us. Okay, let's try it. Let's give it a try. So here is my terminal. Okay, or I can use integrated terminal also. This is a one-time activity. Okay, yes, so here I can type, let me save it first. Here I'll type npx prisma init. Okay, I'll hit enter and let's see what happens. So it's asking we need to install it. Okay, please install it for me, and it's done. Okay, yep, so it has created a Prisma folder which has this schema, and it has created a env file. Here it has this database URL. Okay, that we will change in a while. Okay, yep, so yeah, so this is our schema. So here we have this generator, and here as a provider the default that Prisma uses is Postgres. So we have to change it. Let's say if you want to use MySQL database, here we need to write MySQL, and database URL also we have to provide. So all the sensitive data that we put in environment file, this .env file. Okay, if we have some sensitive data, for example credentials or some secret keys or database URL, we keep that in .env file. Okay, yes, so so now what we have to do is we have to set up MySQL database. You have to install MySQL on your machine, MySQL server. So for that, what you can do is you can go to Google and use XAMPP. Yep, so this is a tool that you can use, or you can use MySQL Workbench as well. You can download MySQL Workbench, but this XAMPP is actually straightforward. You can download on your Windows machine or any other machine that you are using, and just click on next, next, next. I agree, install. Okay, once you install it, then you can open it. Let me open it. XAMPP control panel. Okay, you can open it. Okay, let's read documentation a little bit more. Okay, let's click on connect to database. Let's see what all things we have to do. So default was Postgres, but we are using MySQL. So here in the provider we have to write MySQL, and database URL also we have to change. Okay, yep, let's do that, not a big deal. So what you will do is, once you have XAMPP installed, you will open a control panel, and here you have to click on start and start. So it will start the MySQL server here. Okay, and click on admin. It will open an admin panel for you, PHP my admin. Okay, now here you can create a new database. Now before creating database, you have to create a user also. So here click on this user accounts, and here you can click on add new user. Let's give it a name of, let's say uh, Ram, or let's say uh, yeah, let's write Ram. uh, hmm, let's say, let me write my name Mukesh PH. I'll write Mukesh PH, and host will be our local host, and password, let's say 12345. Okay, retype 12345, and we will click on this global privilege, and we will click on this checkbox to give this user all privileges, and we will click on go. Okay, so now that we have created our user, okay, uh, let me first what I'll do is I'll actually copy this sample URL. So I'll do a control C, and let me put this sample URL in my schema, not in schema, in .env file. Okay, let me now remove this, and let me add that URL. Okay, so here we have to write MySQL, and then the user which we created. So user we created Mukesh EH was the name of the user, and the password was 12345. Okay, and the host is our local host, and port number, here you will get your port number. Here you can notice we have port number 3306. That's the default port. Okay, that is already written, and now we have to provide our database name. So let's create a database. So let me create a database. I'll click on and let's give this database name, let's say chat db. Okay, chat app db, let's say, or we can simply write chat app db. Yeah, that's a good name. let me write underscore, that will be more better. Yeah, chatApp db. Okay, let's click on create. Okay, once the database is created, we have to copy this name. Okay, control C, and we have to add it in our environment file. Here we have to rename this to the database name which we created just now. Okay, perfect. Now we have done this. Now let's go to our schema file and let's write here MySQL, since we are using MySQL database. MySQL, that's it. So provider we have changed this to MySQL, and the database URL also we have changed. So this URL is taking from the .env file. Okay, so in .env file we have configured this database URL. Okay, so that's done. Okay, now we are good to use our MySQL database with our node.js or Apollo server. Okay, now what's the next step? So next step is we can create a model. Let's click on this use Prisma migrate. Okay, so now we have to create a model. So what the heck is model? See, what we will do is what we need is what we will have is in our database we will have a user table. Okay, for that we will not write any SQL query for that. Well, what we will do is we will create a model in our schema file, and what Prisma will do is Prisma will take that model and create a table out of it. Okay, so we do not have to write any SQL query by ourselves. Prisma will write it for us. So all we have to do is create a model. Okay, so let's create a model. So I'll create a model. Let's give it a name of user. Okay, yeah, at the rate we do not need here, just model and user. Now in this user table, what we will have, think of it as a table. What all things you want in that table, what all columns you want in that table. So we need a column with ID. Okay, and this ID will be of type integer, let's say, and this ID will be a primary key. Okay, so each user we can uniquely identify all the users with their ID. So this ID needs to be a primary key. For that I need to add an attribute, that is ID. Okay, and I want that user will not provide this ID. This should be generated by the system, right? For that we have to add here default, and it will be auto incremented. For that here I need to write auto increment. That's it. So we have added our one property in our model. Okay, or I should say we have added a one column in our user table. Okay, what all other columns it will have? Let's say it will have first name. Let me provide and capital first name, and it will be of type string. Okay, it will have last name, which will be of type string, and then it will have password, which will be of type again string, and then it will have email also, which will be of type string. And when this user was created, for that we can add created at column or created at property, and it will be of type date time, and this will be generated by system. We will not add a value for it. It will be generated by system. For that I can add default, and here I can add now. So you will find these kind of syntax. If you want to learn about the schema, you will find example for that in the documentation. Here you can learn about it, how to create a schema and what all different things you can give. But for now we need only these things. Okay, yep. So let's save this. Now what I want is Prisma should create a table, a user table based on this model that we have created. Okay, now there are two commands that we can type, okay, in order to achieve this. So if you'll read the documentation, what we can do is we can type npx prisma migrate. Okay, migrate, and then the environment names, that is dev environment. So we are on our local machine, that is local environment. So we call our local environment as dev environment. And if what name you want to give to your migration script. So in this example, init is written, so init will be the name of migration scripts. So what this command will do is this will generate a migration file. That migration file will have all the SQL query, okay, that is create table or something like that. It will have a SQL query like this, and what Prisma will do is it will execute this query on our database. This is the one command which you can type, or there is one more command, okay, that you can see also in the console, okay, that you can see on the console also. I think it went. I think it was written here, but it's not showing right now. Okay, so what you can do is we can type Prisma db push. So what it will do is it will not generate a migration file. It will directly take this model and it will create a table out of it. Okay, let's try it. Okay, let's give it a try. So what we will do is we will type here npx Prisma db push. Okay, so either you can type this command npx prisma migrate dev and you can give any name, okay, or you can type straightforward db push. So this command is really straightforward. It will not create any migration file. It will directly create a table based on this model. Okay, so let's see what it does. Let's wait for a few seconds and it's done. So let's open our database. Okay, let me see, let me open it and let's see if we have a table. Okay, yo, there you can see we have this user table. Let's click on structure of it and here you can see it has generated all these columns. Okay, ID, which is a primary key. Here you can see it's a primary key. We have first name, last name, password and email. All right, awesome, amazing, right? Prisma is awesome, isn't it, right? So this is the one way. Okay, you can have a look on your database by using this tool. Okay, php myadmin. Okay, or we have one more tool that is created by Prisma. Okay, if you want to have a look on all your tables. Okay, so what you can do is you can type one more command for it. Okay, so you can type, what you can do is you can type npx prisma and studio. I'll hit enter. So this studio basically is a tool which will show all the tables in our database. Okay, so let me click on this URL and here you can see the Prisma Studio is opening and it will show the user table for us. Okay, it shows that we have this only one model. If I click on it, it will show the table. Okay, see, it's showing that it has ID, first name, last name, password, email and created at field. Okay, right now it doesn't has any row that we will add in our next video, but this is also a great tool, right? You can use either of them. You can use this also, or you can use Prisma Studio also to view your data on the database. So that's it for this video. We will continue in our next video. All right, so let's continue further. So now what we will do is we will create a new user, or instead I should say we will sign up a new user. So whenever we want to create something, we have to create a mutation for it. Okay, so we will create a mutation for signing up user. Okay, so before we do that, one thing I realize is that each user will have this email unique, right? For that, here we can add @unique attribute. Okay, yes, make sure you do that. Once you do that, again you will have to type let me open my terminal, integrated terminal, and again here you have to type npx prisma db push so that this change can be reflected in a database. Okay, yep, so it's done. So it's saying that your database is now synced with your schema. Okay, perfect. So again I can type here npx prisma studio. Okay, yep. So let me minimize this and we will open our type def. Okay, let's create a mutation for it first of all. Okay, so let's give this mutation a name, maybe sign up user, and from the client we will pass all the user detail, that is first name, email, last name, email, password. Okay, so let's give this a parameter name, let's say maybe user new. We will pass from the client, we will pass this as a query variable user new, and what will be the type of it that we have already created, that is user input. Okay, and it's a mandatory thing to pass. For that I can add here exclamation to make this argument or this parameter a mandatory thing. And as a response, server will response the user which is newly created. For that, like here I can add a type that is user. Okay, so server will respond with a newly created user. Okay, so we have created a schema for our mutation. Let's now resolve this mutation. Okay, so let me copy this name and let me go to my resolver file, and inside this mutation I can add sign up user. We have to resolve it. Okay, so it will be a function, and in function first argument is parent, which is undefined, so here I'll add underscore, and second argument is where we get our all the arguments that we are passing from the client. So from that argument I can destructure user new object. Okay, so this user new object will have all the details of user, for example email, first name, last name, password. Okay, so in order to create a new user, we will have to install one more package, that is Prisma client. Okay, so I'll go to documentation actually, and I'll click on this concepts, or I can click on this Prisma client, and what I can do is I can copy this command npm install Prisma client, and I can put it in my terminal and hit enter. Okay, yes, so let's wait for a few seconds and it's done. Okay, so we will have to import here, import, let's give it a name of pc from Prisma client, and now we have to create an instance of it. So let's write const Prisma equal to new pc dot Prisma client and parentheses. Okay, we are done. Now let's say if we want to create a new user, here you can type Prisma, then the name of our model. So name of our model is our user, right? So here you will get suggestion, you do not have to worry. Here you can see we are getting suggestion, or not user new user. Okay, and then if I put a dot here, then you can see we have many methods, and out of it we have this create. Okay, now in create we can pass an object, and let's say what all things we want to create. Okay, so inside this object we have to also we have to add here data. Okay, what data we want to create, and in that data we can again it will have an object, and here we can say that user will have first name of Mukesh or something like that. Okay, NA. Okay, but before we go ahead and create user, we have to add some of the checks. We have to hash password, and we have to add some of the checks. Okay, let's first do those things. Now if you want to learn these all commands, that or what all different command you can type or write, here you can go to actually this concepts. Okay, concepts, and here you can you know uh, go to Prisma client, and here you can click on this CRUD, and here you can see how you can create data. Okay, and all the different things. So documentation has so many examples. From here you can learn about this Prisma. Okay, how to read the data. Okay, so first what we have to do here, so first before signing up user we have to check if that user already exists in our database or not. Okay, for that here we can write prisma.user. Okay, and then user, and then we can use find first, or we can use find unique as well. Okay, so we can uniquely find user with their email, because email is the unique property that we have said here in our model, right? So we can find user, and here I can add where uh, where again it will be an object where email field is equal to user new from the email which we have sent from the client. So email which we have sent from the client, we can get it from this user new object, and here I can add dot email. Okay, and this is a asynchronous operation, it will take little bit time, so here I need to add await, and since I am adding await here function, in front of this function I need to add async keyword. Okay, yes, and I can store the result of that in, let's say, const user. Okay, like this. And now let's say if this user exists, if we have something in our user, In that case, we will throw an error because user already exists with that email, right? So we will not allow user to create a new one because user already exists with that email. So in order to throw an error, we can write here throw new error, and let's say here error message will be user al already alread already exist with that email. Now there are different ways how you can throw an error. That's a general way. Instead of this error, you can write here Apollo error. Okay, so you can import something from Apollo server, and you can import Apollo error, and you can use this Apollo error as well in place of this error keyword. Or what you can do is you can also import authentication error, right? Authentication error, if let's say if we are producing any error that is related to authentication, right? So yeah, you can use this as well. But technically there is not much difference between authentication error, Apollo error, or general error. Okay, so I'll tell you there is a very slight difference I'll tell you in a minute. Okay, for now we can put this authentication error because this error is because of the authentication, right? So we can use this. Yeah, but technically there is not much difference if you will use Apollo error or if you will use error. There is not going to be much difference. It's a very slight difference that I'll tell you in a minute when we will execute this mutation. Okay, once we have added this check, now what we will do is now we have to hash a password. We do not have to save password in a plain text in our database. We have to hash it. Okay, so for that again we need to install one thing, that is we have to install uh, bcrypt. So bcrypt is a package that we can use to hash our password. So I'll type here npm install bcrypt.js. Oh, bcrypt.js. Okay, that's the name of the package. Okay, once we do that, we can import on the top. We can import here we can write it import bcrypt from bcrypt.js. Let me put this line little bit below here, Control X, because let's first keep all import statement and then rest of the code here. Okay, yeah, perfect. Now in order to hash the password, we will use this bcrypt dot. It has a method called as hash, and here what field we want to hash? We want to hash password. So from user new object, we can access this password field, password pass wrd field, and we can hash it. Now here we need to pass a salt or salting round. That's a string or a number. Let's say a 10. So 10 is the salting round. So what bcrypt will do is it will take that password and it will convert that into a random string, and it will add a salt to it, and this process it will do 10 times. Okay, so we will have a very random hash generated. Okay, a very super secure hash generated, we can say it like that. So make sure you add a decent number here, but don't give a bigger number because it will take a little bit time. Okay, your server will take little bit time to generate a hash. Okay, so don't pick a bigger number here. 10 is a decent number. Okay, yep. So once a password is hashed, we have to await it because it's going to take a little bit time. So it's a asynchronous method. Okay, it returns a promise, right? Yep, this method returns a promise. Okay, we have to await it. Once we have hashed a password, we can keep it in a variable. Let's say hashed hashed password, like this. Okay, once we have hashed a password, now we can create a user. Okay, so here I can write const new new user, maybe like this. And to create a new user, we can use Prisma user create, and in this data we have to pass this user new object. Okay, but if we do it this way, then our password is going to be saved as a plain text. Okay, so first of all we have to create a copy of this, and then the password field we have to override it with this hash password, right? So in order to create a copy, we can use a spread operator here, user new, and now we can override password field with the hashed password like this. Again here we have to put await if I'm not wrong. Let me see the return type. Prisma create, it's asynchronous operation, right? If I am not wrong, let's click on this create. Yep, we have to put await in front of it. Let's put it. Yep. So once the user is created, we can respond it to client. Okay, we can respond the client with this newly created user. So I can return new user. Okay, perfect. So our mutation is created successfully. Now let's test it. Okay, perfect. Let me first open my Prisma Studio, or I think it's running already, right? Yeah, it's running already. Let me start my development server. Nodemon start. Oh, Nodemon server.js. Hopefully there should be no errors. Finger cross. And seems like there are no errors. Let's go to our localhost 4000 and let's click on query your server. Okay, now let's click on this create user tab and let me get rid of this, and let's generate a mutation using this documentation. Okay, let's go back, and here you can see we have the sign up user mutation. Let me click on plus. Okay, it has written a boiler code for me. Okay, so user new, we are passing it as a query variable, and here let's say, okay, it's already written here. All right, perfect. Okay, yes, perfect. So we are passing this user new as an object. Okay, and once the user is signed up, what all fields we want. Okay, here we have to write that also. Let's say we want ID, and let's say we want email, and let's say we want first name. Okay, and we want last name also. We want all the things. Let's try to run it. Okay, and there you go, we got the response. That means that user is signed up successfully. Now we can go to Prisma Studio and let me click on this reload button to see. Okay, perfect, awesome. Now here you can see we have this ID1 that is auto incremented, first name Hitesh, last name Kumar, and password is a unique string, and email and created that's also generated by the system. Perfect, awesome. So that's it for this video. In next video we will sign up we will sign in user instead. Okay, all right, so let's continue further. So now that user has signed up, we will write a mutation so that user can sign in, right? Okay, so before we go ahead and do that, let me explain you a little bit about this authentication error. So let's say if I try to sign up this user again with the same email, if I try to run it, and if you can see here, we have got this error with the message user already exists with that email. But status code is still 200 only. Server has responded us with a status of 200 only. So status is not going to change. That's what I want to highlight here. But here you can see we have something called as extension, and here it has written unauthenticated. Okay, that's the difference. This extra detail this Apollo server has added. Okay, this related to authentication. So this extension object tells us that yeah, this error has possibly occurred because of something wrong in authentication, but status code is 200 only. So that's one thing that you have to keep a note of. Okay, now let's say if instead of writing authentication error, I can write Apollo error. Apollo Apollo error. If I save it, and again if I try to run it, now here you will see that message is same, status code is same, but only difference here is internal server errors. Here it's showing in our extension codes. Okay, and if you write here instead of Apollo error, you can write error, and it's going to remain same only. Still we will be able to see internal server error only. If I try to again run it, there is going to be no change in the response. Okay, so that's one thing that you have to keep a note of. So we can write authentication error, because that error has occurred because of something wrong in authentication. Okay, yeah, so that's the difference. So it's works little bit differently. Okay, GraphQL actually works little bit different with the REST API. So in REST API we used to attach different status codes with the responses, right? But in GraphQL there is no straightforward way of attaching different status code. Okay, you can obviously Google the workaround, but again there is no straightforward way of attaching different status codes with the responses. Okay, let's come to our topic. We have to now sign in user, right? Okay, so let me first create a mutation for it in my schema. So let's give this mutation a name of sign in user, and from the client we will pass maybe, let's say, a object with user sign in, user sign in. Yeah, user sign in, we can give it a name. Yep, perfect. And the type of it will be, again we have to create a new time. This time while signing in, user will only send us email and password, right? So I'll actually duplicate this, Alt Shift down key, and here I'll write user user sign in input. I should write user sign sign in input. Okay, Control C, and here I'll give this type. But here I'll get rid of this first name, last name. User will only provide email and password while signing in, right? And that's the mandatory argument that they have to pass. And as a response, they will get something called as token. Token. Now this token type doesn't exist. We have to create it. Okay. Let me create this token type also. Now what is token, that I'll tell you in the next video in detail. So don't worry about that for now. Okay, this token will have a token attribute, a token and which will be of type string, and let's make it mandatory. Okay, so token will have this something called as token property, which will be of type string. Okay, now let's resolve it. Let's resolve this mutation. So I'll add a comma here, and we have to resolve this time. We can actually close the rest of the files. We have to resolve sign in user now. So let me write here sign in user. Again, this will be an asynchronous function, async. Let me put async keyword here. And now again, first argument is parent, which will be undefined in our case, and from second argument we can destructure this user sign in object that we will get from the client. Okay, so again still first line is going to remain same. Okay, Control C. Again we will check if user already exists. Okay, and this time what we will do is if user doesn't exist. So here we have to write if this user doesn't exist. Okay, if user has provided an email which doesn't exist, so user need to sign up first before signing in, right? So here we will throw new we can throw authentication error, and here we can write user do doesn't exist with that email. So they need to sign up first, okay, before signing in. That's what we are saying by throwing this error message. Okay, so that's the check. Okay, here we need to copy this, and instead of this user new, we have to write this, use this object user sign in instead. Okay. Rest of everything is perfect. Now what we have to do is we have to compare the passwords. Okay, so password that we have in this user sign in that we have get from the client and the password which is in our database, first we have to compare that if they are same or not. Okay, for that again we will use bcrypt. So I'll use this bcrypt, bcrypt dot compare. Okay, compare, and here we have, here first argument is uh the string and then the hash. Okay, hash is something that we haven't stored in our database. Okay, that's the hashed password. Second argument, first is the password that we have got from the client. Okay, so we can access this user sign in, and from it we can access password. So this is the password that we have got from the client. We have to compare this and with the password that is in the database that we can get from this user. Okay, so here I'll write user dot password, because we have all the details of the user in this user object. We can access password out of it this way. And this is a asynchronous function, right? It returns a promise, so we have to put await in front of it, and we will have to, this will respond uh, with a boolean value. Okay, so here I can write const do match. Okay, it will be true or false if I am not wrong. Okay, yes, here you can see boolean value. So if password is matched, then it will be true. If password doesn't match, it will be false. Okay, so again we have to throw a error. Okay, control C, and I'll control V, and if control C and control V, if password doesn't match, then we will throw again an error that email or password is invalid. Okay, don't give user a hint that they have entered email correct, password is wrong. Let's say if you know a hacker is trying to guess email and password, so we should not give them a hint that email is, you have entered email correct and password is incorrect. We should always throw a general error like this, email or password is incorrect. Okay, don't give a hacker idea that he has guessed email correct and password he has to guess it now. Okay, so try to throw this general error. That's the best practice we are following here. Okay, now we have done our all the validation. Now what we can do is we can, user has passed all the validation checks. Now we can sign in user. So how we will sign in user? Basically we will give them a token and they will keep this token with themselves. Okay, so I'll tell you this concept behind this token in the next video in detail. But to generate a token we have to, okay, we have to install a package now. Okay, so let me write here only. I'll open a new terminal actually here. Okay, and here I'll type npm install json web token. Okay, yes, we need this package. It's done. Let me delete it and let me minimize it. So we will import jwt from JSON web token. Okay, now what we can do is we can use this jwt dot sign. Okay, and it will be, we have to pass an object to it, and we have to create a token, but we have to pass a property, and that we will create a token based on that property. Okay, so let's here pass user id as a property, and the value of that will be user dot id. So we are basically creating token out of this id. Okay, so we are basically encrypting this id and we are calling it as a token. That's what I mean here. So basically we are getting the id of the user and we are basically encrypting it and we are calling it as a token. Okay, yeah, and in order to encrypt it we need a secret or private key. Okay, So it's a sensitive information that we should create in here, that we should define in our environment file. Okay, so here I'll write JWT secret, and it could be a random string actually, 1 2 3 4. You can write any random string here. It's a secret key that you have to keep, or you can call it as a private key also. Okay, first of all, let me see if I'm able to get these values from .env file directly in my resolver or not. Okay, that first I have to make sure that. Let me comment this for now, this code, and first of all let me here do a console.log. I want to check if I'm able to get the properties in my env file in my this resolver file or not. So I'll write process.env, and in order to access any environment variable you can type process env and the name of that is jwt secret in our case. Boom, like so. Let me save this and let me see in my console. Yep, we are able to get it. Okay, so if you are not able to get this, then you need to install a package.env. Okay, but I am sure that you will also be able to get it directly. You need to install this and then you need to add this line. Okay, and then you can use all the environment variable from your .env file. Okay, in case if you are not able to access it, I am able to access, so I am sure that you will also be able to access. Okay, so actually this .env Prisma automatically added it for us, right? So I think Prisma is handling this environment variable for us. So we can pass this JWT secret, or I should say a private key, Control C, to this hash. Let me uncomment it, and here as a second argument we have to pass a private key that we have in our environment file, right? And this method is a synchronous method, so we do not need to await it. We will get directly the token, right? So let me keep that in token constant, and I can return this token. It will have value token. Okay, key value both are same, so we can just write here token, and we are done here. Okay, we are done here. So we have added so many checks. Okay, perfect. Let's save it, and everything looks good to me. Okay, if we have any error, then we will solve it together, right? Yeah, so let me create a new tab here, and again I'll click on this mutation, and this time we have the sign in user instead. Okay, and I'll click on this plus. It has already written this boiler code for me, and I'll click on this argument also, and I'll click on this plus also here. Okay, and now let's try to sign in the user which doesn't exist. Okay, first of all here let me write token, so we will get something called as token. Okay, yep, once we sign in, and let's try to sign in a user which doesn't exist. So write any random email and any random password, 12123, any random password. If you try to run it, then oh wow, we should technically get error, but we didn't get it. Okay, so this is strange. Let me see the logic, or let me first see the server has restarted or not. No, it hasn't restarted. Okay, that was the error. I think sometime nodemon actually sucks. Let me run it again. Okay, there you go. User doesn't exist with that email. Okay, let's provide a valid email now. Okay, that is this. Let me copy it and let me provide a valid email. Let's say we provided a valid email, but password we can keep it incorrect. Okay, password is incorrect. If I try to run it, now again we are getting email or password is invalid. So now let's use the correct password. Okay, yeah, Control V. Let's run it, and now there you go, we got the token. That means user is now sign in successfully. Beautiful, awesome, amazing. So in the next video, we will learn about authorization and I'll tell you the concept behind this token logic. This is it for this video. Alright, so far we have done a very good job. We have implemented authentication system. User can sign up and sign in. Okay, now we will learn a little bit more about how this JWT authentication works, and I'll also explain you about authorization. Okay, so let me explain it with a diagram. So here it is. Here we have our client application. Client sends a request to a GraphQL server for signing in, and client basically provides its email and password, and it sends a mutation request. Okay, once the user is signed in, our GraphQL server responds client with the JWT token. Now, why our GraphQL server responds with this JWT token? Now, here the reason is that because let's say if in future client wants to access any protected resource. What is protected resource? A resource where user needs to be logged in order to access it. That we call it as protected resource. So how our GraphQL server will know that if user is logged in or not? That's why what GraphQL server has done he has responded with a JWT. Now, if in future client wants to access any protected resource, what they will do is, let's say here in this example, client wants to get all the users that are available in the database. Now consider this as a protected resource. Okay, user needs to be logged in order to get all the users that are available in the database. So this is a protected resource. Let's assume it that way. So while making this request, what client has to do is in request headers, client has to attach something called as authorization, and the value of that will be equal to JWT which client got when he signed in. Okay. So once the client does that, now a GraphQL server will get this authorization. Our GraphQL server will extract this authorization from the request header, and it will verify if that JWT is valid or not. Okay, once the GraphQL server verifies it, then our GraphQL server will allow user to access that protected resource. So in this case, our GraphQL server, once it verifies, it says that yes, you are authorized to access this resource, and here are all the users that you requested. So that's how our authentication system works in a nutshell. So this part we call it as authorization. Okay, and sign up and sign in part we call it as authentication. Yes, so once we will implement it, then you will get more clarity. Okay, so let's implement this authorization now. Okay, so now what we will do is here. So we have this users query added. Let me get rid of this. Okay, so we have this users query. Let's resolve it. Okay. So here what I'll do is here I'll write uh, users, and it will be a function. So whatever function returns, that will be sent as a response to client, right? So what we will do is, in order to get all the users from our database, what we have to write here is Prisma. Let's await it first. Okay, so we are using await, so we have to make this function async. Perfect. Now here I can write prisma.user, and here I can use find many to get all the users available in the database. That's it. Okay, so let me put this in a constant users, and I can return it. Now let's say we can make this a protected resource. Now user needs to be logged in order to get all the users. Okay, how can we write a logic for that? Okay, see, what we can do is we want to access where is the diagram? Okay, it went away. Okay, basically we want to access from the request, we want to access headers. Okay, and that we can do that in our context. So to Apollo server we can pass something called as context. Okay, and that will be a function. Okay, now in this function, what this function does, okay, so before our request reaches to the resolver, okay, to the resolvers, okay, to all the resolver, they will go through this context first. So this context basically acts as a middleware. So before client sends the request, before the request reaches to its respective resolver, they will go through the context first. Okay, they have to go through the context. If we add a context here, okay, and this in this function we have access to, I'll destructure. So we have some extra piece of information in this data argument. From that we can destructure request to get the details of request. Okay, yes. Now you can do a console.log to see what all things we have in this request. But from this request we want a request.headers. Not like this. From this request I'll access headers. Okay, and from headers I can destructure authorization like so, because authorization has the token, right? Okay, so this authorization, this function works as a middleware. So before client sends a request, okay, that request reaches to resolver, they will go through the context first. Okay, now here we can write if authorization is available, if we have the token in our headers, that means then what we will do is we have to import JWT. Okay, that is already done here. So what I'll do is I'll use JWT dot verify, because we have to verify it, and we have to verify authorization, and again we have to provide our secret key. So what we are doing here is, see, when we were creating this token, where it is, when we were creating this token, what we did is we encrypted this user ID. Okay, so we encrypted this user ID using the secret key, and we call that encrypted string a token. Now what we are doing here is we are basically decrypting this again, decrypting this user ID again from this token, from this authorization JWT. So again, when we are decrypting it, we have to provide the secret key. Okay, so here we can write process.env dot JWT. What was the name of the field? JWT secret. Okay, let me copy it and let me add it here. Okay, so this verifier will give us decoded token, and from that we can destructure user ID. User, or not like this, user ID back. Okay, so this name should be same, which is here, which is written here. Okay, so the name which we use while generating it, that we will get once it verifies it, once the tokens verifies it. So from that decoded data, decrypted data, we can extract this user ID back. So here what we did is we encrypted it. Now we are decrypting it and again retrieving the user ID from the token. Okay, that's the logic in the nutshell. And now here what we can do is we can return user ID. Now you know, so whatever context returns, that we can access in all our resolvers. So these resolver has access to the context. So if we provide a third argument to resolver, we can access the context, right? So let's say in order to make this protected resource, what we can do here is first argument is the parent, which is undefined. Second is args. Okay, in this case we are not passing any argument, but third argument is context. Okay, from this context I can access user ID, or what I could do is I could directly destructure from it. I can write it like this also. Okay, yes. So now for now let's console.log. Okay, for now let's console.log user ID like this. Let's save it and let me save this as well, and let me see if the server has restarted or not. It has, it seems. And let me get rid of the extra console.logs here. Yeah, let me get rid of this. Perfect. So now now let's first execute this. Okay, let's see what happens. Okay, if I run it, why it is taking a while? Okay, again, my bad. Oh, not this actually. We will execute this actually to get all the users. So we have already written this query to get all the users. Let's run it. Okay, we have got it, but if in console you see we got undefined. Okay, we got undefined. Now let's log in. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll log in. Okay, I'll sign in with this email and password. If I log in, I'll get the token, I'll copy it, control C, and what I'll do is in this, while making a query, we have this something called as header. Now in this header we can add authorization and the value of that will be token. So I'll paste it here. Okay, I'll click on this checkbox to add this header for me. Okay, and now if I run it, okay, let me see if again server has, okay, now here you can see server has responded, but here also you can see that here you can see in the console one is logged. Okay, that means we are able to successfully get that user ID once we attach the authorization header in a request. Perfect. Now we can write logic based on it. Let's say here we can, in order to make this a protected resource, what we can do is we can simply write here, uh, mm, we can simply write here, uh, if this user ID is not available, I'll put a note here, then we can simply throw an error. Throw new error, and you can use Apollo error or authentication error, or you can also, you can import something called as forbidden error, and you can use this also. Control V, and here if this user ID is not available, then we can send message that you must be logged in. You must be logged in or signed in, whatever you can write it. Once, if we have this user ID, then this condition will false, and then we will get all the database from our users from the database. Also, one more thing that we can do here is, we are returning all the users available in the database, but also what we could do is we could return all the users except the user is logged who is logged in. Okay, how we can write that query? So here you can click on, actually go to Prisma documentation, and here you can click on, let me scroll it to the top. Here you can click on references and click on this Prisma API reference. Here you will see there are so many examples they have provided, this related to find many. They have provided so many examples here that you can read. Okay, what I'll do is I'll click on filter conditions. Okay, and there we have, we can write, we can use operators and conditions, and out of it there is an operator called as not, so this we can use. Okay, so we will return all the users except the users logged in. Okay, so here what we could do is, here we can write, let me read this again, how to write this, where in our case it will be id is not, uh yeah, is not equal to the user id. Yes, so let me write it. So here what we could do is we could pass an object, and here we can write where id, so in our user table we have id is not equal to the user id. So the logged in user id we have access to, right? That in context we have access to the id of user who is logged in, so that we can pass here. So by writing this we will get all the user except who is logged in. Okay, let's save this. Okay, and one apart from that, one more thing here we can add is we can actually sort the order. Okay, so here we can write order by, or let me write here comma first if I can add it, order order by by and we can order by a created at field. We have this created at field in our schema, right? Yes, and we can order in a descending order. So for that I can add here DESC. So the user which is newly created will come on the top. So we are basically ordering it in a descending order. That means the user who is newly signed up, he will come on the top. It will come on the top. Okay, perfect. Yes, so let's sign couple of more users and then we will test this API. Okay, so let me sign up couple of users here. So what I'll do is, let me sign up Mukesh, Mukesh, Kumar, and password will be, oh, email will be mukesh@mukesh.com. Okay, let's sign up this user. Okay, perfect. Let's sign up couple of more. Let's say here, let me write here Suresh Kumar or Suresh Sharma or Suresh Verma, and here I can write Suresh at the rate suresh.com, and let's sign up this also. Now we have three users in our database. Perfect. Okay, now let me copy this, Control C. Okay, and let me sign in this user. So I need only email and password. Okay, let me copy email and password and let me paste it here. Control V, and let me sign in. So I got the token for this Suresh user, right? So I'll copy this token, Control C, and while making a query to get all the users, now I'll attach token of Suresh. So I should get all the users except Suresh. Okay, so let's try it, huh? If I run it now, let me see if that server has restarted or not. And now, oh, we are still getting Suresh. Okay, let me again run it. Okay, now we didn't get. Sometimes this nodemon actually sucks. I don't know why. I need to update it. But see, our query is working. Our authentication is working. Perfect. So we implemented authentication, authorization, and we learned so much of the advanced stuff. So that's it for this video. In the next video, we will add some more functionality to our application.